Okay, welcome to my classroom. I'm just going to walk you through it here. We're going to start in this little corner by the desk. So in my practicum, all of the classrooms have what they call a teacher table. So that's this little table here for students who need extra help. So this could be because they missed the previous class, they have accommodations, or they just need a little extra support in that class. This can also be a good area for conversations between the teacher and students if they don't want to have the whole class know what's going on. As you can see on here, I also have some extra supplies for any students who need them. This board here would show important dates coming up for the class, like assignment due dates, quizzes, that sort of thing, as well as house any handouts from the previous class in case anyone missed a day or they need another copy of that. That's where they can find all of the previous handouts. This board here will have a monthly calendar with important dates for the class, but also the school as a whole. So like assemblies, if school's going to be closed, that kind of thing. And then these two cabinets back here would have other course material like quizzes, handouts that are coming up, that kind of thing, mostly for my benefit. I would also store some like snacks and really what I would consider like treat snacks on here to give out as rewards for answering questions correctly, or if we're doing presentations, the first person or group to present, as that can be quite stressful. And I would also use this kind of thing on quiz days. So one of my teachers actually provided snacks before her tests and quizzes so that all of her students at least had the opportunity to eat something before the test and they weren't getting distracted because they were uncomfortable because they were hungry. So we're going to move over into the library section. So this would be for extra course reading materials as well as other books if students would like to read any of them. So all of the books in here would be options for book reports or independent novel studies, which then allows for students to have some say in what they're learning and reading about. I also have some more comfortable seating options. These will be good for group work or if anyone would like to sit there during lunch. I also like the idea of having some softer lighting in this area, just as a bit of a break from the bright lights of the rest of the room. And I like the idea of this space also serving as an area to have some of those more serious conversations between teachers and students, because it is separated from the rest of the class and might feel a little bit less intimidating than the teacher table where, you know, you're on one side, they're on the other. That can be really intimidating, and this is just a bit more casual, more comfortable. So having conversations here could also help get to the bottom of why a student is misbehaving, which I think is really important to do. But obviously, depending on the severity, more serious action may be needed, but I like the idea of starting it in this kind of more informal space. So then here I have a little chest set up for students to use during their breaks, or if they want to somehow incorporate that in a project, they're more than welcome to. And then same thing with the easels for students to again use just for fun on their break, or if they wanted to use it for an assignment in the class, that would also be amazing. And we're going to move over into the computer area now. So this is an area for students to work on in-class assignments or complete other homework if they don't have access to similar resources at home. Students can also sit here during their breaks, so long as they're being respectful of the space and everyone else in it. So I do like the idea of having the desktop on top of probably Chromebooks, just because there's some things that are really difficult to do on Chromebooks. And I also like the idea of this being a separate space, just to prevent distraction. So then we're going to move into this area. So this is for students to sit during lunch if they prefer that. So this cabinet here will have snacks, cutlery, dishware, that kind of thing if students are needing it. And then some of these cabinets down here would also contain hygiene products. because those can be difficult for students living in poverty to have regular access to. And this is particularly true of feminine hygiene products, and many girls miss school because they don't have enough of these products. So this way, none of my students will have to miss out on school or extracurricular activities because they're lacking hygiene products. I also have a little coffee, tea set up here. So students are more than welcome to do that. Maybe it's a cold day or they're needing something to help them regulate if they're kind of feeling a bit stressed and anxious. Maybe like take a moment, have some tea or something and kind of calm down a little bit. So then we're going to move into the main class area. So my goal is to teach high school English or social studies, and I very much tried to reflect that in the layout of this area. So I like the idea of having students in pods because in many English and social studies classes, discussions are very common. So I would most likely let students choose where they would like to sit, as it can be easier, especially early in the semester, to have certain discussions with people they're more comfortable with. And then throughout the semester, I would still provide opportunities for them to speak with different people, so they're meeting new people and being exposed to new perspectives. If they are getting distracted sitting with their friends, I would then either move them to a different area or make a seating plan, but still allow them to pair up with their friends for the occasional discussion going forward. As you can see, I also have some tables around the edge here. So these are for if students would prefer to work alone on certain days, and if that's the case, I would check on them during discussions to make sure they're still engaged in the class and understanding the material. But I know as an introvert myself, I often felt drained having to always sit in groups, especially if they were assigned, and would have liked the option to sit on my own when I was feeling drained. And then I also have some of these desks intended to be standing desks. So students who are maybe more kinesthetic learners can still move pretty easily without disturbing other students. So then I have a few boards set up at the front of the class. So I would probably use one as a projector screen for videos and slideshows. And then probably this one at the very end would be used to keep track of assignments. So that would be like the due date and a brief overview of kind of what I'm expecting from that assignment. And then I would probably use this one and this one to write on during class. Just depending on what we're doing, I might not use both of them all the time. But probably on this one, I would have a section kind of blocked off for students to write their names on if they're needing to step out during class time. So then this way they have the freedom to leave class as needed, but I can still keep track of where students are in the event of like a fire drill or a lockdown or anything like that. So I would likely have one portion labeled bathroom, another labeled water, and maybe a third section if they're taking a walk to decompress. So probably at the start of the semester, I'd kind of go over some ground rules with this. So for example, students would not be able to leave during a lecture, especially if it's a new topic or idea, and I'd only allow 2 to 3 students out of class at a time. And then lastly, obviously if people are abusing the system by taking too long, not going where they said they were going, or leaving too frequently, I would go back to a more traditional system of, them asking me directly and only one person being allowed out at a time. And I know in several of my middle school classes we had a similar system, and it was really nice to not have to wait for the teacher to be free to ask. I didn't feel like I was interrupting the class, and I felt more able to make decisions about what to do during that time and my physical needs. And then this is also kind of a contrast to the scenario presented in Chapter 7 of the textbook where students were not allowed to use the water fountain in the class during their class time, which seemed kind of weird to me when I was reading it because the teacher was able to drink her coffee and the one student with a medical condition could drink water. So the students as a whole were not able to be independent in choosing when to get a drink, which probably led to discomfort, especially as one student complained that it was very hot out, and could also lead to a lack of respect for the teacher and the other students, but I think particularly the teacher, because they may have seen her as being a bit hypocritical. And then, so I quickly want to touch on the walls of the classroom. So there are some flags out here. So these would represent the cultures, and over here, sexual orientations and gender identities of my students, so they can feel like they belong in the classroom. And the intention behind this is that sense of belonging, but also for the classroom to feel like a reflection of the world as a whole. So and there's also artwork kind of around the walls throughout the room, which in my mind would be previous students' work. So these could serve as inspirations for future students and also as a way to showcase the high quality of work previous students have done. Then I also have a lot of windows in here because I do like the idea of using natural light as much as possible, because those bright fluorescent lights can be really overwhelming and overstimulating for some people. Obviously, in an English class, there's quite a bit of reading, so natural light is not always the best option, but using it when possible can be a nice change for everyone. So a lot of the intention with this classroom was to treat students as young adults, as I'm wanting to teach high school, so all of my students will be in their last few years as teenagers, and some of them may actually be adults by the time the end of their grade 12 year comes along. So the main goal was to give them the freedom to be themselves and advocate for their own needs and interests, while also providing as much support as they need, and also, of course, sticking to a curriculum. And I also really wanted to design the classroom to be as much of a reflection as the real world as possible, especially as it relates to diversity. Alrighty, thank you for listening and coming on this tour of my classroom.